being 1022. All right, so again, as I mentioned, the main idea for today is to learn the beginnings of how to set up a board on Adobe Illustrator, bring in your drawings and data, in this case media, from Rhino. Okay, so the most important thing is exporting. Right, perhaps highlight that right there, because we're exporting images and we're exporting line work. Okay, we're going to talk about that from Rhino to Illustrator. We're going to set up the board, right, which in terms is your layout. Okay, we're going to start with a 20 by 20. We're going to see how space is working, how things are working on our screen right there, and we might be doing two. We'll see how time works. One for let's say drawings and one for renderings or 3D drawings. But something very important, right, is your line work concept of the stroke versus the fill. Okay, and Illustrator works primarily with those two attributes in terms of color, a fill and a stroke. Okay, and I'll talk more about that. Text boxes, simple, just like what I have right here on my screen, right? How to introduce these text boxes so that you can add text onto your layout. Scale figures and silhouettes, talk about that, how to bring those into the software. And then project requirements, right? We have a title, right? We have project elevations. We have a top view, which is going to be sort of, is going to be a diagrammatic, right? There. I don't know how this is going to work, right? Let's see. Yes. Let's see. A top view, which is going to be sort of a diagram. I don't want to call it plan necessarily, but it's just going to give us the idea of where things are located, which I want us to label. And then an axonometric view, two perspectives, and a short narrative. Okay, so let's get going with this. And again, just do me a favor, just hit save wherever you are right there. Have a brownie, just watch my screen. I know you want to finish your model right there, but it's important that at least even as you go back and watch the video, which I'm glad to see that it has helped you guys. Well, at least you should know what's on the video, right? Like, oh, okay, so I know that's right there, and it was about in between when this was happening and that happening, so you can go towards the video and find it faster, right? So that you kind of don't just necessarily zone out here in class, and more importantly, you ask questions, right? You ask questions right here, or later on. Okay, so glad to see as well through your guys' screens, very nicely developed models right here. And again, this project, believe it or not, is teaching us a lot of, really important concepts. Aside from the forms and the design, just the fact that you guys are becoming proficient with 3D modeling and how to manipulate forms three-dimensionally, that's really, really important. And some special commands that you guys are working with. So aside from that, you guys are learning a lot, okay, and you guys will see how much this is going to help you later on down the road, and as you continue with this class. So I went ahead and just populate this screen somewhat. You guys have much more geometry on it. Let me go ahead and maybe unlock some of these things right here, and I'm gonna make myself a copy with I always like to work with copies, right? I mean, again, that's kind of like the nice thing of working with the software right here, that copies are free, right? So I always like to leave a trace. Yeah, they are free, right? You can make as many copies and multiply things as much as you want, and I always like to keep a trace of what I'm doing. Okay, so I make a copy right here to the side. I'm actually probably going to have to clean this up as well, because if we go to the requirements right here, let's start with the elevations right here, which are basically right the views. Some, at least not all of them, we're gonna have to come in here and reset them. All right, let me go ahead and pause the jams right here for a little bit. We're gonna have to export these views right here. So what do we have right here? That's our front. We have our right view right here, and we have our top view. Okay, so in terms of elevation, right, which one would qualify as our elevation, droids? Front and the right, right? So we need two more, right? And remember that that's quite simple, right? Set view, right? And in this case, right, front and back, which is, if you think about it, it's a mirrored view of this. So again, what's the front? Well, this is the front, back, right, left. Now, let's not get this confused with more technical architectural drawings. You're rarely going to see an elevation being labeled the front or the back, right? You guys know how usually they're labeled? Mm-hmm. What do you use? Southwest. Right? South, west, north, east for the most part, right? I mean, north elevation, south elevation, east elevation, west, right? Just to not get to, like, for example, this campus, right? I mean, which one's the front? Right? I mean, which one's the front of this school? I mean, maybe the building, we know which one's the front. Maybe doesn't even. Do we enter through the front? No. Not really, right? I mean, not even, right? Or Valle Verde, right? I mean, is there a front? Like, it's like the same if you enter through here, through over there, right? Like the same building. Everything looks the same, right? So more importantly, you orient with the those directions, north, south, east, and west. But for right now, that's going to help us. Okay, now this is actually very simple. You guys know how to do this already. We're going to export some images. Now let's do I saw some of you guys labs. You guys already changed this, but if you type options and you go to appearance right here and you extend this menu right here, you have colors. Okay, later on you might feel like customizing some of this for whatever reason, just for customization sake, or because it helps you, right, actually see things. One of the main things perhaps is the background that I can see, you might change, in this case, sort of that black color right there. And why did it not change here? Right, options, right, options, background, appearance. Let's see, we want a white background. Okay. Well, if that's not going to change it, then we go to view, display modes, right? And we go to shaded. And then right here we have this other background. I'm not really sure I didn't change it over there, but right here we can go to white and do that. So we're not gonna have time to, we're not gonna have time to Photoshop the background, which is sometimes that you're gonna start doing and all those things. But at least a white background will nicely help blend in with the white paper. And again, I saw some of the labs that already are using that. So again, view, display modes. Again, this is all the different view modes that you have right here, such as shaded or rendered. Right, so we're working with shaded, background color, and then white. Okay, so from there, again, it's important that you are maximized on your view, right? And then you type capture. Oops, or you go to view capture. Right, to file. Let's do off to file so that we can keep track of these right here. So notice right here is giving you which view you're working on, right? So in this case, back, perspective. Let's actually start with the front so that we can maybe go, somewhat around the model. So set view front. So we have that right there. View capture to file, which is what you guys have been doing for the lab so far, right, or for the exercises. Okay, so that's what we want. In this case, the scale is correct and the size is correct, but later on you can just know that you can change the size of this. Okay, this is what's called the resolution. So it's helpful to know where that is. So I can type OK. Let's say that I come over here, C2 projects, and then P2 midterm, and then let's create a new folder, right? Let's call this maybe midterm. Midterm. Oh, I guess it did happen right there. So midterm. Let's call this front, right? and let's hit save. Okay, so we do that. I'm gonna do 2 for right now. And notice that I don't have to be constantly, double clicking over here and double clicking over here, right? It's easier if I just, I don't have to, minimize that. I can just change the view right here automatically to be the front. Let's do the right here. Notice I need to zoom in a little bit. If you hold Control and then with your right click and drag in and out, you get what's called your dynamic zoom, right? Which is a little bit more control than just scrolling in and out. Yeah. So I really like it because it's really smooth, right? So I can really just kind of zoom in there, and I, pan this around, center my view, view, captured to file. In this case, let me, oh, well, it's already there. You see how the grid is checked off, right? So let's make sure that that's off right there. Hopefully it does work once we export it right there, but it's telling us right there that it's going to export a image without the grid, so that's good. Hit OK, and then we have this was the right view. Okay, so let's start with those 2 images. Okay, so I'll talk about these silhouettes right now in a minute, but Illustrator, okay? So Illustrator is a great software, and the best way that I can, describe it is think about it as, coloring. Right? I mean, it's well, yeah, coloring and making, your presentation, yeah, pretty presentation, okay? Now, it's arguably, the argument, it's possible that, you can create presentations on PowerPoint, you can create presentations on Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, but the reason particularly to work in Illustrator is its quality to change lines, okay, and the line qualities. Okay, so we work with what's called vectors. I used to work we work with what's called vectors. Okay, so we're changing the line, the attributes of the lines, and that's important right here. So first thing that we need to do is set up a new file. Okay, so we can go to new, and your screen might be a little bit different based on the version and whatnot, so don't worry, we'll figure it out. But the most important thing is that we're on some sort of a similar screen like this that I can set up a page. Okay, so you need to work with the width and the height of the page. Okay, and that's right here. Now, what is that dimension? Well, for right now, we're going to work with the 20 by 20. Okay, so width 20 and height 20. Now, in this case in particular, the orientation is not a big deal. Doesn't matter, right? Why? As a square. Huh? It's a 20 by 20. It doesn't matter if it's vertical or horizontal. There isn't such thing. All right. So, but just bear in mind that that's not always the case. All right. So let's hit create. Okay. If you press Control R, right, the rules come up over here, and I always like to have those just to make sure that I'm working with the right board. Now, if I go to Document Setup and Edit Artboards, again, I get the board highlighted right there, and more importantly, it tells me its dimensions, and you want to make sure that they are the right units. Okay, sometimes it's 20 by 20, but it's a weird other unit, such as points or pixels, which is would be very, very small. Okay, so we do that. Okay, so it's going to be your board. Okay, and this is very much like PowerPoint, if you want to think about it that way. I think it's the easiest way that I could see this. Maybe, so that we can start with this, we can start with the title. Now you see how I bring this box out. Maybe let's just talk a little bit about navigation here before I get going. For those of you guys that, a little bit of introduction. So if I hold Alt, scroll in and out, I do that, right? Zoom in and out. Oops, work. So I need my pen tool. Okay, so this is the pen tool, that way. But if you hold spacebar, remember, if I press spacebar, it's gonna pause the recording, so I need to figure out how to stop that. But that's okay. I can pan right here, and panning just moves my screen right here. But on your case, you can. Okay. Are you sure? I don't think so. H. Oh, okay, let's see.
H for hand.
H for, yeah, that's true. All right, thanks, Julia. Great observation right there. So H or spacebar, all right, will allow you to pan. Okay, so Alt scroll in and out. All right, so that's it, guys. You know how to use Illustrator now, right? Boom. Not really, right? But here, we'll learn it as we go. Okay.
Did you mention scrolling or not?
A scroll, yeah. So that one.
No, no, the second.
Which one? This?
Scroll?
This? Yeah. So there's this parts right here. I rarely use them. I use more the Alt, right? I mean, I just zoom in and out. But you know, I get. I think Brian, is this what you're talking about, right? Kind of like scroll with this little bars right here. Yeah. Please. Yeah, guys, you can navigate through your page like this. Okay, so another good one is Control-0, right? It's called Zoom Extents or Zoom Page. I mean, it shows you everything that you have right there. Okay, so layers are over here. These are your layers, very important as well. And all of your things that you can use to draw right here. Okay, so I'll mention a few. Let's start with maybe a text box right here, which is your type tool or letter T. Right, and I drag and drop or drag and release, and I create a text box. Right, it comes with all these interesting text right there. Right, some sort of right there. Make sure that you don't read it right all loud, because you know. Okay. I don't know. I think okay. No, I think it's like some you know. It's oh really? Maybe it's some sort of Latin. Hocus pocus thing. Yeah. So. Anyway, right. So if you double click on that text box that you just created, we can delete now this. Right. So I can even maybe come over here, right, and select the title right here, maybe, and I right click copy, right, and I paste it over here. I'll just go to edit, paste, and I have that right there. Okay, so it's tiny. It's tiny. So I can select this right here and increase the size of it in this window. And again, if your window looks different than mine, which sometimes can happen because of versions or whatnot, the first thing that I would do, right? Let me just go back here. The first thing that I would do is to go to this tab right here, and you know, go to Essentials right here, and it's gonna bring back your window to default. Right? So that's where I will start. If still things are missing and bars are not there, just let me know. Now let's work with the, you know, typically you want to work with the capital letters right here. So I'll show you how to do that. So select the box right there, character, and you scroll all, or you look for this icon right here. And what does that say? All caps. Right? So bring right there, all caps. Keep these text boxes as big as you need. Right? Meaning that, you know, just reduce the size if you need so. And let's do a bold because why not? Because it's a title. Maybe, you know, in terms of text right there. Well, get the idea. There's a lot of text options right here. Right now, you know, just keep that so we can keep moving on. Right, so let's bring those images. Okay, so let's go to file, and there's again a number of ways you can do this, but let's just start with file place, and let's go through the folder right here, midterm, and let's select these images, right, file and place. Okay, and we get that right here. All right, now something very important, right, very important. This is like a big thing, right? If you're going to resize this image, right, well, the first thing that you do is you click on it, right? You get its handles, right? This corner, you know, points right there, the min and whatnot, and you can do it from any of these points, right? You can do this, but whatever you do, right? Yeah, make sure that you, right? You keep what? Its proportions. So how do we do that? We hold shift. Thank you guys, right? So we hold shift. Right, hold shift. Right? Holy shift, hold shift, guys. I've never heard that before, but that is kind of funny. I'm gonna use it now. whole shift, guys. Now I cannot say it without, you know, laughing about it. Yeah. Okay. But that's important. Okay, because you know this is important. Think about it. You're specifying this for someone to actually build it, right? I mean, hey, I need this to be this tall, but this width, right? So you change that, right? And say you change this over here, right? And then you're measuring this. Is like, whoa, what's going on? Why is this taller? Well, it's because your drawings were off, right? I mean, oh, it's because they just didn't fit on my drawing. I was just trying to make it smaller, right? So, and in this case, you know, we're not even working with scale, but later on you will. And the idea is I can actually go to your drawings, and with the scale, but your architectural scale, I can measure your drawings. So if the measurement that you're specifying right there does not match with what I'm measuring with my scale, we have a problem. So long story short, hold shift. All right, just hold shift whenever you're resizing these images right here. Okay, so let's do that again. All right, file, place, right view, place. Okay, now we have our smart guides right here. You see how I'm moving this right here, and I get those pink guides right here. So right there it's telling me that it's aligned right there. I hold shift, right, and scale this down, and I'm just placing my cursor right there, and I look for that pink line, right, and I drop right there. As a rule of thumb, you want your architectural drawings to line up. What do I mean? The base of your model measures the same if I look at it from the front or from the right. Right? So what does that mean? If I have this drawing like that, right? Well, that's not completely true, right? Because in this case now I have a bigger base, right, than this one. And you can bring out a guide from the margin right there if you click and drag. Right? If I place it right there. So again, place my cursor on the ruler, click and drag. I bring out what's called a guide right there. And again, I can start seeing this. And if I place this right there, right there, this base looks bigger on this drawing than on this one over here, and that's not accurate, right, in terms of the drawing. So I'm gonna those guides right there. I'm going to close it here. Those guides right there act just as any other, well, as a geometry in general, as an object in general, right, in the sense that I can move them around, and select them and delete them. Okay, so I can select this guy right there and delete it right there. So again, I hold down shift and make them align right there. So, and right, control 0, see how I'm doing right there. Okay, so questions so far? Okay, now there's this very helpful tool. If you hold on Alt, right, if you select an object, hold on Alt, and you click and drag from that object, release your cursor, release Alt, you make a what? A copy. Thanks, Brian. You make a copy. Okay, so what are we going to use this for? For our labels. Okay, so in this case, I can double click on this, and I can tap this front, from view. Right. The size, okay, the size is ginormous right now, and that's not something that you can actually tune until you kind of print it, or based on some experience. But let's say that for right now, should we do an 18? Sure, 18. And that might look very tiny in our screen right now, but printed, it's most likely fine. Okay, so we'll have that. So that's our front view right there. Now notice that I might want to place this a little bit closer right there to the drawing, like this, right? But what happened? It disappeared, right? Why? It's underneath it, right? It's behind it. So right now we're not working with layers yet, and layers will help with this. But it's a good introduction for this option right here. You select an object, very much like PowerPoint as well. What option do you have in PowerPoint? Yeah, thanks for it. It's the same thing right here. So I right click on the image right there, right? Arrange, send to back, and that text kind of comes up right there. Okay, as a rule of thumb, you want your text to be lined up with this bar right here. This is your ground. In this case, for us, is the base, but typically you're gonna have your ground line right there. So you want that to align there. Okay, so again, I hold on Alt, click, drag. If you're talking about combos, as you guys were talking about combos, right? If you actually combos, yeah, you missed it, kind of. There's some combos going on, right? Kick, punch, or something. No.
Up, down, A, B, left.
Yeah. These combos are not as fun, but nonetheless, if you hold on Alt key, click, drag, and your Shift key, right? I not only make a copy, but the copy is constrained on that axis right there, right? So if I move it, right, so it's aligned. Okay, so I do that. So again, what happened is underneath it, right click, arrange, send to back. Okay, so double click right here, right, and let's call this front. What was this? You just got here. That's right. Right. You're right. Yeah, you're right. Right is right. Right is right. You're always right. You're not? All right. So simple, right? So far so good? Easy. Okay. All right. That one I'm not familiar with. But now layers, guys. Layers is an important just procedure anywhere, okay? Any software that you're using, okay? Layers in general. Think about it as color coding. Think about it as, I don't know, selection, right? I mean, layers are critical in anything that you do. And it's one of the things that sometimes, we get by without them. But until you need the layers, you're like, oh, man, I should have created layers, okay? So let's create some layers. What kind of layers can we use? Well, maybe, we can type here title. We can create a new layer, double click on this name, call it labels, right? Create a new layer and call this images. And we're gonna need a new layer right now that is lines. Okay, so we'll start right there. And then, we'll create more as we go. Now, how do we change an object's attributes in terms of how do we send it to that right layer? Well, if you select an object, any object, and you come to the layers right here, you're going to see that a few things happen. Okay, the layer which it's on highlights blue, and this little box, it's thickened. Okay, so notice that they're all on the same layer. Now, if I select an object, come down here to its little box, and then I click and drag. Except that, wait a second, that actually is on the right layer. Right, so I'm not going to move that one. Let's play with images, okay? Fake, what's it called? Yeah, wrong. What's it called? Not fake, what's it called? False alarm, false alarm. False alarm. Title is good. Title is good. Images are not, okay? So images. So this object should be under what layer? Images. Thank you guys. All right. So, but look, what layer is it on? Title. All right. So if I click on this little box and I move it to that layer right there and drop it, notice that now its box got green. All right. So if I click out here on the board, nothing is selected. Click back on the image. It's on the green layer. Now, what happened to the title? It's not there anymore, right? But it actually is, right? And I know because it highlights it right there. So again, what happened? It's underneath it, right? So if I click on the image, right, and I right click, arrange, send to back, but it's not working. Why? Because now I have layers, okay? And layers work from bottom to top, meaning that the layer that is on top covers the objects that are on the underneath it on the layer list. Okay, so labels in this case is on the underneath images, but if I move images underneath labels, right? Well, actually, let's move it under title because we haven't moved the other one to the right layer right there. There we go. Okay, so let's select from view, move it to labels. right view, move it to labels, and image, let's move it to images. Okay, so again, if I move images on top of labels, it's going to cover the titles. Okay, now be careful where you're shuffling layers around. You don't want to drop a layer inside of a layer. That would do that right there. You don't want to do that. You create a sub layer. Right? So I'm going to undo that. You want to drop it in between, right? And you get that line. Okay, so send images all the way to the back. Okay, so let's do something that we should do right from the beginning. File, save as. Now this is Adobe Illustrator. Let's call this midterm board. Okay, so we get that back up. Okay, all right. So we are doing really good, guys. Let's talk about how to bring some of these images out. Okay, now the drawing, and in this case, oops. Is this recording or not? Yes, okay. So let's not confuse, just because we're working with these drawings right here, these are not necessarily architectural drawings per se, right? These are not technical elevations. These are more like design elevation. I mean, trying to get the idea, communicated, right? Kind of like Fernanda says, pretty pictures right here. Later on, you'll see, much more technical architectural drawings, are a little bit less colorful, right? They're black and white usually, and they're trying to communicate a different story. And that's usually what I tell you guys, or I tell my media classes. Just like your English or whatever class, right? Speech, maybe speech or English. Right? I ask you for an essay or for a speech, right? When you're writing it, what are some of the things that one of the first things, or at least I remember they would tell you, they ask yourself, who is your, who's your hero? Who's your hero? Sure. Who's your hero? And let's say we're talking about that hero right there, but I want to write a speech or I want to write an essay. What's your main idea? Yeah, sure, but how I write it, right? I mean, depends on who is my audience. Persuasive, right? Who's my audience, right? Am I talking to a bunch of politicians? Am I talking to colleagues? Am I talking to, people that is within the field versus people that is not in the field? So architectural drawings are very much like it. Okay, so for, let's say, clients sometimes that they're not very well trained on architectural drawings, you really need to help them. Right? I mean, make it very colorful with textures. They really want to see, right, the drawing. Exactly, right? I mean, what they see, they're going to get. If you make me show an architectural drawing to a client, maybe this is a client, or grandma, right there, like, mijo, why is it all black and white? Like, why don't you put some color? Like, well, no, I mean, actually, there will be color. It's just that we're not showing it right here. Okay, so, but if you're talking to an architecturally trained person, or a colleague, right? Well, okay, I recognize that that's a schematic design, or that's a schematic drawing versus a, Sometimes I don't even. Well, I mean, that's when we ask, right? We ask, and we ask your instructor what kind of drawings they want. Hey, do you want color? Do you want it to be rendered, etc., etc.? Or perhaps this is going for a competition or a portfolio, right? Again, there's a different, meaning, or there's a different, correct? There's a different objectives, put it that way, behind each drawing. So right now we're working with a presentation, so we're going to work on this image quality right here. So why I bring this up, in this case, what is this object right here? Yeah, so what? Right, so what is this right here that I have highlighted right there, the green box right there? It is. It's a picture, right? I mean, it's an image. It's an image, right? That's really good, and that's what I'm trying to get at this, right? So this image allows us to see the forms, right? The outlines, and what's neat about using these images is that they actually also show us some sort of depth. How is this depth communicated through this image? By the contrast of the different colors, right? In particularly, how do we call that? Correct. What is it? Shade. Okay, so we have darker tones, right? So somewhere around it, right? So that tells us that, hey, there's something going on right there. Okay, not only is the colors different, but the shades are different, which then gives us shadow. All right, now we want to complement this in this case with line, right? Line work, right? Lines is what help us really define the edges and volumes, right, that we have right here. And the command that we use for that, it's very simple. Let me make sure that we are set up correctly on this. The command for this, and let me move this right here. Let me move this to the side over here. Okay, so the command that we want for this is called make 2D. Make 2D. Okay, make 2D does exactly that. It gives you a 2D drawing of a three-dimensional object. Okay, what do I mean? Well, select objects to draw. These are the objects that I want to draw. Okay, now be careful because that's not what I want to draw. You see how it got highlighted right here? It highlighted everything that I wanted to draw except for what I wanted to draw. It highlighted everything but what I wanted to draw. Okay, so that's the power of this multi-viewport right here, because I have no idea how that happened. All right, so I escape, make 2D again, and these are the objects that I want to make 2D. This right here. So that means that I'm actually in the wrong view right here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so if you select an object or a set of objects and you do a right click on this icon right here, what does that say? Zoom selected all viewports. Okay, yeah, so that means that it's going to bring that object into all my viewports, kind of like to avoid that error that I just made. Okay, so we do that. Okay, now that's the object that I want to make 2D. You got to make sure that you go into the right view in this case, which is the front. Let's do the front first. Set view, where's front? Front right there. Okay, and again, select objects to draw, enter, that's make 2D. This window pops up. Okay, hidden lines, let's not do hidden lines for right now, and let's just do okay. Now it created, yes, right, it created all these layers right here. These are the make 2D layers. I'll talk about that in a minute, but more importantly, before you do anything else, right, you gotta make sure that you go to your origin and you select this right here. And again, if I zoom selected in all windows right here, you see what I get. I get a 2D drawing. Okay, now I am realizing this is going to be easier for us to work with if we do a file save as. Okay, let me show you what I mean. You remember how I mentioned, hey, let's make a copy so we can start from from scratch, and we're on the new phase. Let's actually do this. I made my copy, right? This is the original file right here. I'm going to do a file save as. I guess this was P2 Midterm Lab. Let's add right here lab export. Okay, all makes more sense right now. Click save. Why? I'm actually going to delete everything that it's not going to make it to my final board, which are those things right there. Okay, and let's make sure that these layers are unlocked. So unlock that right there. Okay, so let me just backtrack real quick. So I did a save as, right, so that I keep track of the original. I mean, I want to keep that. And again, at some point you start becoming paranoid about just keeping track of everything that you do. And, just a record. Files get corrupted, USB drives get lost, and I don't know, all sorts of crazy things happen. So just having all your work on a single file, not a good idea, right? So I did a save as, so that I can work now on a new phase. This is not my new phase. And I'm going to be selecting objects, and I don't want to be selecting things that are not going to make it into my final drawing. So I deleted everything else. So I can just focus on those particular objects right there. So long story short, you could even do this as you begin the file, just do a file save as and delete everything else except for a copy of the model that you're trying to export images out of. Okay, so we have the model, and we have again, you know, this lines right here, and it's always going to send it, at least in this case we have set up to the top viewport right here. Now again, if I turn the grid off right here, all right, so that I can show you these two things together, so you can actually maybe see it right here. Okay, so this is my 3D object. Maybe you guys taking freehand drawing, or you know, freehand or graphics or freehand in general. So when I have my freehand drawing class, I mean, we go outside, and we go outside. All right, guys, let's go sketch campus, or let's meet downtown, and we'll sketch right there. All right. So we worked on elevations, we work on perspectives. So when you're doing down, let's just say we're the San Jacinto Plaza, right? We're downtown drawing. Okay. So there's the alligators right there on the plaza, and they're your sketchbook. Okay. So your sketchbook is trying to capture the 3D object, the real object, right, which is three-dimensional. But your drawing is what? Two-dimensional. Okay. That's the same idea behind this. Okay. So any view that I capture right here, and which we're going to do, right, such as this angle, for example. Right now I can ask you, okay, guys, get your sketchbook out. Let's draw this right now. Whatever you see on my screen right there. Okay, sure. But you could be like, Munoz, well, don't you know about this command called make 2D, right? It's pretty cool. Check it out, right? So I can select those objects right there, right click, this window comes up right there, and hit OK. I go to my top view and check it out. Right? It gives me a drawing of that, and I'm gonna, you know, again prove it to you that it is 2D if I look at it on my perspective view. Right? It's flat. Okay. So it's a pretty neat technique, right? I mean, it's a nice way of representing, and again, it works. In this case, we're going. Anyway, you guys know what your elevation and plan views are called in terms of drawing, what kind of view those are. Maybe it's a stretch right there, but it maybe, you know, it's helpful. You know, remember this option right here, ortho. What does ortho do?
Oh, it just goes by the axis.
Right? Yeah, it just goes by the axis right there. So you guys remember the term orthographic? Right? So there's a difference between your orthographic, which is what this is right here, right? That it's just a flat drawing, you want to call it right there, versus a perspective, which is kind of what we exported right here. Okay, so all that makes much more sense, you know, in a minute. But let's go back. So I exported, or I created my make 2D for my front view, which is this. So now what do I want to do? Well, I don't need to, right? That's true. I mean, Fernanda says, well, you might want to color it. Well, I don't need to, right? Because I already have color over here. But what do I need to do? Huh? Merge, yeah, merge, paste them. I mean, I need to combine them, right? I mean, both of those, that's kind of like the right idea, right? But it's a matter of just putting them in front of each other, okay? So what do I mean? That means that I'm going to export these images, or this line work. So basically, you have two things: an image and lines. Images go on the back, lines go on the front. Okay, and you know, follow me. So select the lines that I want to export. Right? Type export. Let's look for the folder where we're going to export this. Right? Projects, project 2 midterm. Midterm, right? Okay. And then now here, very important, 3 things. Okay, 3 things: name, location, and format. Name, location, and format. Name. So I guess this was the front. We're going to find out. All right. But notice I already have a front right there. All right. Right. So this is the front line work. All right. Now, location. Well, that's the folder where you're saving that. Now the type. What's the type? Right. Yeah, it's Illustrator, right? Now, because if I do an export right now, what's going to give me? A 3D model, which is what I have already. I mean, I don't need that. I already have it. But if you click on this menu right here, so I have a bunch of objects right here. I mean, or a bunch of options right here. You can that's what's neat about Rhino as well. You can export as a bunch of things. But check this out. One of the formats right there. What is it? AI. Illustrator. All right, so I can automatically export an Illustrator file right there. So front line work, I like that. I'm actually even gonna copy this right here. You see why? So I'm gonna save it. This window comes out. I hit OK. All right. So we get that. All right. Now we want to look for that file that we just exported. Projects, midterm, I guess, midterm. Right, so that was front line work. I can double click on that. All right, I have that right there. I can select it. Let's group it. Yeah, let's group it for right now. And paste it over here. All right. Oops. Why? Oh, I didn't copy it. All right, so Control Copy or Control C. All right, Control C copies it right there, and Control V as in Victor, paste it. All right, so I have my lines. Control G. Control G. Good question. Thanks, BB. So select the object right there, and so if I right click on group, I guess you can actually do selection and right click and group, right? But you know, command wise, you know, you can select it, Control G as in group. Okay, so bring that out there. Right, we have these lines right here. Now we want to place it on top. Right, so we can get that right there. Not only that, but first, actually, just so you can see the effect of this, we again, as Fernando mentioned, we need color. And we want to see the color, but we already have it. Now, these lines also have color, but in this case, we don't want color on those lines. What do I mean? I select the lines right here, right? And this is what I mean about attributes. Okay, in this case, I have a fill and a stroke. Now, the stroke has a question mark because there's multiple attributes. Now, let me talk about this maybe right here on the side before we move on, so that maybe I can explain this better, in theory at least, before we apply it with your project. Okay, so if I click on this object right here, that's the rectangle tool. Okay, I'm going to draw a rectangle. Okay, and I click and drag. Okay, I go back to my selection tool, click out, and what happened to that rectangle?
Went away.
It went away. It disappeared. But it's actually there. Why can I not see it? Can I not see it? Correct. Right. So if I select the path of the rectangle that I just drew, and I go back to its attributes right here, I can see that it has neither a fill nor a stroke. Right? So this is where, again, a little bit of the digital world kicks in, right? I mean, it's kind of like drawing something with an invisible marker, right? Except that in this case, we can see that, right? I mean, we can see it right here. So we have the path, but we have no attributes, okay? Now, right now, I'm going to draw another box. I'm going to double click on the stroke. I'm going to give it a color, say red, hit OK, and then draw. I go back to my selection tool, click somewhere on my board right there, and I have a rectangle. Not only that, but I have a rectangle with the attributes which I have set up right here. Now, once I have this drawn, I can select it, double click on its fill, and I can click any other color right here, click OK, and I have a box, right, or a rectangle with those attributes right there. So let's go back to that one that I couldn't see, right, and I can actually double click on its fill, give it a color, right, and I can now see it. I can select that same box, I can give it an outline color, let's say black, right? And it has a black outline right there, or it should. Right, let's see, double click right there. Okay. Right. And always keep track, or keep your eyes on this attribute page or section right here, which is your fill and stroke. Okay, so you can see those. Now we're talking about this. Let's talk about line weights, right? And it's called the stroke again. So check this out. So if I select that box that I have drawn right there, I go to stroke right here. It says 1. But if I bring this menu right here, bring that to a 4, gives me that thicker outline. Okay. Select this box over here. Again, select even a more tense outline right there. It gives me that right there. Okay. So again, the outline is called the stroke, and the inside color is called the fill. Okay. And again, if you place your cursor on top of this guys right there, it gives it to you stroke and fill. Now again, let's say that I just want the outline, but I want no fill color. I can select the object, and I go into the outline right here, click on it, and then there's this option that says none. It gets rid of that. Or vice versa, I can keep the outline, and I go to the, click on the fill color, click on none, and it removes the inside color. Okay, so that's a basic, concept behind these two tools right here. So let's delete those right there. Now, why do I bring this up? Because in this case, we just want our lines to be black, right? And I mean these lines right here. All right. So we go back to the attributes. Now, why does it have a question mark for the stroke color? Because it has multiple colors. Right now, what is this? It's kind of a big question, like ambiguous question right there. But this right now is a group. Right? It's a group of multiple lines. If I double click on it, I can click on individual line segments right there, and then I get its color. Right? I can select a line and hey. But if I click out of the group just by double click, so if I double click on the group, I go into the group. If I double click outside of the group, I'm outside of the group. So if I select the entire group and I look at the stroke, what's saying is like, hey, well, I mean, it has a stroke, but which one do you want? I mean, I can only display one. So it has a question mark right there. But I can actually change it globally, right? Just double click there and just select black, and I have those lines right there. Okay, so just bear with me, guys. You guys are doing great. Let's bring down the opacity of the image a little bit. Right, so let's select the image. There's this transparency tool right here, right? And under opacity, right, let's bring that down a little bit. Right, and again, it might look very faded right now, but trust me, when you print it, it'll be fine. Okay, so that we can see better what's going on, and then I can place the lines on top of it. All right, and we have that. Now, is that right? All right. Now, what do we need to do? Scale it. All right, we need to scale the line. Now, this is the name of the game right here is match the lines with the what? Oh, that is actually a game. No, this is a even more fun game, right? I mean, this is just match the, right? So we do that. Now I can use my arrows right here to move the line work, right? And so that we can overlap it right there. So Control-0. Now, perhaps at this moment you're like, well, Munoz, I don't understand. I mean, like, what's the big deal? Like, they look the same, right? Do we really have to? The answer is yes. You really have to, yes. No, but later on, I mean, later on, you actually will realize that even that image on the background disappears, right? Later on, when you start doing, different kind of architectural drawings, and you start playing with the line weight, right? Yeah. Yeah, and that's the idea, and I'm glad that you guys bring this up, because it is, at the end of the day, it's about legibility. Okay, and maybe if I do, let me try this. You know, maybe let me do this right here on the side, so you guys can be witness of this this amazing stuff right here. Let's do this. Okay, so you can compare. Okay, so in this case we have line only. Okay, so what does the lines allow me to see? Yeah, right. Shapes, edges, right? Where things go, right? I mean, and not only that, but it gives it to me very, very highly defined. And again, I'm not going to get into it right now, and that's because these are vectors. Okay, these are lines. I can actually edit these lines right here. I can mess with this thickness right here, you know, make them thinner and whatnot. So as architects, I mean, that's pretty much all we have, right? I mean, lines. That's how we communicate. Sometimes we don't even have color. You'll see that later on. Drawings are printed just black and white. The color sometimes is just a luxury, right? In order to have color in our presentations, right? And we don't. Just very special occasions we have. Now, for the kind that we're doing right now in the presentation, right? We do want to have color, but having the image only as well, it's not as clean, right? I mean, and that's because this image, anyone knows what the images are made out of? Again, kind of an ambiguous question, but I know because some of you guys have had media already, and correct, they are made out of pixels, all right? So again, in this case, the lines, you guys remember what are they made out of? So lines are, well, strokes, right? That's kind of like on a little path, but the two things right here are pixels versus vectors. Vector versus pixel. Now, again, without getting too much into the theory, you'll see that pixels, right? I mean, color each little box like this. Vectors, on the other hand, are more limited in the sense that, you know, you only have this, right? I mean, you only have a stroke and a fill. And later on, you know, you're going to be working with vector art and you're going to see the difference. But it has this very cartoonish look, right? So if you maybe open up, you know, vector, right, you're going to start recognizing it, right? I mean, you get this. I mean, it's not that you cannot get detail, but it's a much more, it's a different look, right, than let's say pixels, okay? Animated, right? And again, it looks animated, right? So what's the name of the software right here? Illustrator, right? So it's like you're illustrating, right? I mean, like with your markers and colors like that. So that's the idea. Now, again, so lines are important, images are important, but again, it's when you put them together, right, that, you know, it really kind of like pops. Yeah, I mean, it really gives you that nice little punch right there. And these become very dynamic drawings, very, very fun drawings. So we have that. So again, I'm going to delete this right here. So that was this right here. Apparently this is the right view. All right, so I'm going to move this right here, and again, we want them to align. In any case, if you need extra reassurance that you're aligning them correct, bring out a guide, right? And then select your objects, put your cursor, drag, and then align with the ruler right there. And then I can delete that guy right there. Okay, so let's do this one together, right? Just as a review right there, so that you guys can work on your own. This is right view. Okay, so how do I start maybe with this right view in order to bring it just like this one over here? Okay, so export line work. How do we do that?
We need to make the right thing 2D.
The right thing 2D. Exactly. Thank you. The right view 2D. And what view was this? The right. Right? Right. Was it right? I guess so. Right. We're going to find out. If they don't match, they're not the right one. Okay? So what do I do? So again, I move. And let me just let you guys know that anytime that you make 2D, and you, okay, make 2D, select the objects, enter. The output are the lines. It's what gives you. Right? It's what kind of like, whoosh, here you go. Right? Here's the 2D. By default, where it's going to place it is on the 0, 0. So what does that mean? Anytime that you make 2D, exactly, move it. Exactly, because if not, things are going to start overlapping. They're not grouped. You have lines on top of lines. A mess. Becomes a mess. So even better, move it on the side. Even better, select it, type group. Select this, group. It messes with your layers later on, just so you know, but for this exercise in particular, that's going to be okay. Okay, so let's go over here, select the object. Let's go to its right view. Now that it's selected, is it the right view? That is correct, right? Because we have our dodecahedrons right there to the right and dodecahedrons to the right. So it's already selected, right? So what was the command again? Make 2D. What happened? I broke it. It's kind of freaking out, but okay. There you go. So that will be it. Selected. So make 2D. Enter. Well, okay. Well, I won't go to some of the settings right there. Later on, we'll do some hidden lines, and you know, later on we'll do some other things. But okay, for right now, let's just do okay. And it was processing. I go back to my top view, and again, as I promised, right, it was going to be sent to the origin. Okay, so let's move it out of the way, right? Oh, and let's group it. Okay. Now notice that it gives me right there a little box, which is my viewport. That's kind of nice in terms of you know, framing the object right there. But I'm not gonna export that. So before I actually ungroup, I'm gonna ungroup it. I'm just going to select the drawing right here, the line work that I need, and I'm gonna type export. Okay. So what were the 3 things that we need to look for when we're exporting this? Name, location, and format. All right, guys, great team here, teamwork right there. So I can just click on this this title right there, front, but rather than being front, I can edit this and be right. Location, well, I'm on the same folder, so that's correct. And let's again be paranoid about things. I mean, just again, double check, guys. It's part of our duty as just architects. Just check and double check. Okay, so save, and this window pops up. Right now, I'll just do OK. All right, and nothing happens. But if I go to the folder again, what this was selected to save at, right, double click on it, right, and we have this. So right now, as I click through this, right, I can select different lines, which is nice. But let's say that I want to move something, right, and oh man, I left this behind. What can I do in order to avoid that? Huh? Group. Okay, so select everything, Control G for group. Now I can type Control C as in copy. Okay, go back to my view over here, Control V as in Victor for paste. Right, and again, V for Vivi. Yeah, Control V for Vivi. Right, Viviana. There, I like that more. V for Vivi. So what do we want to do to this image on the background, though? Maybe first, so that we can see the lines better. Huh? Transparency, which you know, technically here it's called opacity, but you know, I always call it transparency. It's understood. But here, just so it doesn't throw you off, you know, just for the record, technically it's called opacity. Okay, and I want to believe that even 60 is it's not enough. Once we print it, we'll see. But you don't need the slider right here. You can just highlight that, type 60, enter. Right, and it kind of goes kind of like face it. But again, remember, color and the tones that we have right there are just for context. Again, what were those colors giving us? Shades, right? Which in turn gives us depth. That's the key word right there, depth. Okay, which is important in this kind of drawings, especially since they are orthographic. Right? We cannot really tell perspective from this, right? I mean, what's in front of what? Okay, so now that we have that, right, what do we want to do to these lines? Scale them and put it together. Now I'm going to bring them right here. I'm going to align them, right? Zoom in here. Now, how do we want to color these lines?
Black.
Black. All right. So we double click on its stroke. And remember, right now it's a group, so it has a question mark. All right. So I can change it all together right there. Click OK, and this does that. And then if I want to scale this proportionally, what do I want to hold? Shift. Okay. So I do that right there. And whoops. All right. So that, for example, it's big. No. Right. I mean, it's the right width, right? But it's not lining up with the image on the back. Okay. So I'm going to undo. Hold Shift. Holy Shift. All right. That's a good one, right? And I can just use, right? I can use my arrows. Now, I'll also show you a little trick right here. If you hold Shift, and you press your arrows, it moves at bigger increments rather than one by one, right? On my arrows, but it just depends what you need. So, for example, there I just press individually my arrow, and do the best that I can in terms of lining them up. If I want to make sure that this is even better, I can even zoom in there, maybe, and I can do that. Control 0, and I do that. That's a good question. Whoops. How come there's no lines in here? Remember when I say let's delete everything else that we don't want on this model right here? Remember that I did that afterwards? That's when I realized this is going to be annoying, because what happened was that this model, I did the right view, right? Just the side view right here. There were objects over here, right? So when I exported a view, right, it gives me everything that was behind it. This is the reason why we're actually, you know what, guys, let's actually just do a file save as and delete everything else. Because if you're not careful where you export your images and there's stuff, it's kind of like when you're taking a photograph or a selfie and someone walks in the back. Exactly, a photo what? A photobomb. So in this case, these dodecahedrons right here, photobombed, are elevation. No bueno, right? No cool, guys. Kind of funny, but now I have to go back and re-export my view, which is not a big deal actually. Let's actually do that, right? So we're on the right view. just wipe it out right there. Can do that. But I mean, again, I'm all for efficiency, but I'm also all up for not doing work that I don't have to do. Okay, so yeah, there's always ways of going back and kind of like fixing things, But yeah, kind of like cutting the X out on the picture or something. Like trim it out. Photoshop it. Well, I think it's actually even easier, right? If we go back and re-export this view. Okay, so let's go back to our right view. All right, and there you go. They're not there anymore. All right, so that was a reason, and that's actually, I'm actually glad this came up so that we can see it right there. So that's not a big deal. Let's go to View, Capture, to File, Right View, everything okay. And I can actually select this image right here, right, and do what's called an overwrite. As I click Save, it's gonna be like, hey, are you sure? Right? Already exists. Do you want to replace it? And I say yes. Now let's check. I'm not really sure if Illustrator automatically updates it or if we need to bring it back in here. Oh, there you go. So as soon as so smart, Illustrator, right? So some files are missing or modified in the links panel. Would you like to update them now? Yeah, let's see what happens, right? So let's click yes, and there we go. So not a big deal. I mean, it bring them up. The only thing that I need to change, right, is the image right there. So do that, and just kind of work with this a little bit. I know. Embedded images. Yes, yes. And I'm not really sure why this is not lining up. Why is that? All right. So anyway, just be careful right now. I'm not really sure why this is not lining up correctly. So anyway, that's the thing with, you know, there's always ways of, again, coming back and fixing things and blah blah blah. But try not to do that. Right? I mean, just try to have a process. Try to have a procedure, kind of a step-by-step thing that again, part of your job as designers and, you know, architects and your career is going to be kind of like looking to the future and see, okay, these problems might come up, and prepare on the past. So as I always say, future you could high five you, like Brian from the past, good job, right? Because Brian from the future, you know, is enjoying all the protocols and procedures that you follow, so that you have a much easier, right? And remember, there's always this mentality of like, oh, I'll fix it later. Well, most likely that later is going to be an hour before it's due. Right? When you're panicking, you're freaking out, you're hungry, you're tired. By that point, you just say,
Screw it.
Yeah, shift this. Right? Shift this, or holy shift, right? So again, you really, and you know, right? I mean, so giving yourself more work for later when you know you're gonna be even more stressed out and tired, probably not a good idea. Sometimes we can't help it, okay? Sometimes we just, oh man, I missed that one. I'm gonna have to go back to change it, but it's not the same to change 1 than change 10, okay? So keep an eye on that. I need to make sure, you know, why this happened right now, but you know, I also want to give you guys some time to start setting this up. Lastly, or as we move on this, you know, as Brian mentioned, without getting too much into it for right now as well, just make sure that all the images that you bring into your file, right, you do what's called an embedding, okay? So look at my screen, right? So I selected an image, and this option should come up here, right? Embed. Now, what this does, basically, think about it again. You have a folder, right? You have a binder, and that's all your project. And at some point, you left a photograph at home, and it's not part of the binder. You open the binder, it's not there anymore. So these images are being referenced right now. And if you don't embed them, and you open them again, let's say at the lab, and you don't have the image stored in the same folder, you're just going to have a big box right there with an X right there, because the file can't file the image. I know. Long story short, later, you know, if you're in my media class, you know, I go more into it, or it just unfortunately happens to you, and that's when you're like, oh, okay, I didn't embed my images. But and that's probably maybe why Brian brought it up. It's like, hey, did you mention the embedding part right there? Because it's traumatized from digital media. Yeah, well, I mean, it happens, right? I mean, it really does happen. So, and the problem is when you don't have access to that image anymore. Okay, so again, just, you're like, what? Don't worry, just select the image, make sure that it's embedded. If you select it and it says unembed, that means you're okay, because it's already embedded. And you save this file right here, and it's always gonna come with you, right? So save. Okay. So
is this like when you can actually like delete the picture, right?
Delete it from where?
From the file.
From your computer, let's say. Yes. Yeah. Yes. I mean, which I don't recommend doing, because again, you always, you know, you might need to bring it back, or for whatever reason, you know, you might want that photo. But in theory, yeah. Let's say that you have it on your drive and you lost it. You lost your USB drive and you don't have access to that image, but it's already embedded over here. Correct. Okay. So we're going to do that, right, for all of your views right here. Okay. Your 4 elevations, top view, axonometric, and perspectives. We'll talk about perspectives in a minute. Okay. Let's do this. Let's take a little break. You guys are doing great. Stretch up a little bit. Drink some water right there.